bells of St. Mary Magdalene Church rang out across the Sandringham estate on Christmas morning 2025, and the scene that unfolded told a story that no amount of Sussex spin could rewrite. King Charles emerged alongside Queen Camilla, followed by Prince William, Catherine, and their 3 children. Princess Anne walked with quiet dignity. Even the youngest royals waved to the gathered crowds with practiced ease. But 2 faces were conspicuously absent from this portrait of royal unity, and their absence spoke volumes. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were nowhere to be seen, not walking behind the king, not smiling for the cameras, not exchanging pleasantries with well-wishers who had braved the December chill. Instead, the couple who had spent years claiming they were being frozen out, given the cold shoulder, and cruelly alienated from family gatherings, were 3,000 miles away in Montecito, California. And here is where the Sussex narrative begins to crumble under the weight of its own contradictions. For weeks leading up to Christmas, headlines had painted a picture of a couple desperate for reconciliation. Stories emerged suggesting Harry and Meghan were heartbroken over being excluded. Reports claimed they felt snubbed, wounded, and pushed to the edge by a family that refused to extend an olive branch during the season of goodwill. The implication was clear. The royal family was being cold and unfeeling, deliberately barring the door to a couple who only wanted to come home. But the truth reveals something far more calculated. This was not a sudden snub. This was not a last-minute decision by palace officials to exclude the Sussexes. The reality is that Harry and Meghan have not spent Christmas at Sandringham since 2018, 7 years ago. 7 consecutive years of absence. 7 years of the same pattern playing out with almost mechanical precision. Think about that for a moment. When Harry and Meghan walked away from royal duties in 2020, they did not simply leave behind official engagements and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. They walked away from the intimate family traditions that bind the Windsors together. The gift exchanges on Christmas Eve, a nod to their German heritage, the formal black tie dinner, the morning church service that the world watches with fascination, all of it gone. And yet, every single year as the Christmas season approaches, a familiar narrative emerges from Team Sussex. They want to reconcile. They are open to returning. They would attend if only they were invited. The headlines shift and swirl, painting Harry and Meghan as the wronged parties, the wounded souls yearning for acceptance that never comes. But what if the cold shoulder story is not what it seems? What if the entire narrative has been constructed to serve a very different purpose? Because when you examine the actual timeline of how Sandringham invitations work, the Sussex victimhood tale does not just develop cracks, it collapses entirely. The October invitations tell the real story, and that story changes everything. Here is the detail that demolishes the entire Sussex cold shoulder narrative, and once you understand it, you will never look at their Christmas PR campaign the same way again. Sandringham invitations do not go out in December. They do not arrive in late November as a last-minute gesture of goodwill. The invitations for the King's Christmas gathering go out in October, and this changes absolutely everything. The logistics of hosting 40 to 45 people at a royal estate over the Christmas period require months of careful planning. Palace aides begin sending out feelers in early autumn, gauging availability and confirming attendance from extended family members and select guests. By mid-October, formal invitations have been dispatched. Recipients know exactly where they stand, well before the first Christmas decorations appear in shop windows. In 2024, invitations reportedly went out in mid-October. In 2025, the same pattern held, October again. This is not speculation or guesswork. This is how the royal household has operated for decades, and it is a timeline that Team Sussex knows intimately well. So let us do the math on what this actually means. By the time those breathless headlines started appearing in November, claiming Harry and Meghan were hoping for an invitation, they had already known for weeks that no invitation was coming. By the time December rolled around and the narrative shifted to words like snubbed, alienated, and cold shoulder, the Sussex had been fully aware of their non-invitation for 2 to 3 months. This was not a family cruelly slamming the door at the last minute. This was not King Charles making a painful decision to exclude his son during the season of peace and reconciliation. The October timeline proves that by the time the public was being fed stories about Sussex heartbreak, the outcome had been baked in for months. Everyone involved knew who was coming and who was not, and yet the PR machine churned forward anyway. Headlines appeared suggesting the king was considering a last-minute change of heart. Stories emerged claiming sources close to the situation believed reconciliation was possible. The public was invited to believe that Christmas 2025 might finally be the year the Sussexes returned to the fold, when in reality, that possibility had been off the table since autumn. This is not journalism, this is narrative construction, and the October timeline exposes exactly how it works. You plant stories suggesting hope and openness in November when you already know the answer is no. Then when December arrives and no invitation materializes, you pivot to victimhood. Suddenly the tone shifts from hopeful to wounded, from open to alienated, from willing to snubbed. The cold shoulder was never real, it was manufactured. The timeline proves that Team Sussex was not blindsided by exclusion. They were simply waiting for the right moment to spin that exclusion into sympathy. And year after year, the same playbook runs with almost identical precision. But just how identical is it? The pattern goes deeper than anyone might imagine. When you line up the headlines from 2020 through 2025, something remarkable emerges. The Sussex Christmas narrative is not just similar year after year, it is virtually identical. Same timing, same language, same emotional beats, same outcome. The only thing that changes is the date at the top of the articles. Every November, like clockwork, stories begin appearing suggesting Harry and Meghan are open to reconciliation. They are described as hopeful, willing, and ready to make amends if only the royal family would meet them halfway. The tone is carefully calibrated to present the Sussexes as the reasonable party, the ones extending olive branches while the palace remains stubbornly cold. Then December arrives, and the language shifts with mechanical precision. Suddenly hopeful becomes heartbroken, willing becomes wounded, open becomes alienated. The headlines transform from stories about potential reunion into tales of cruel exclusion. Words like snubbed and cold shoulder dominate the coverage. The subtext screams from every paragraph. The royal family has once again rejected poor Harry and Meghan during the most family-oriented time of year. Researchers who have tracked this pattern have compiled the headlines side by side, and the results are almost comical in their predictability. 2020 brought stories about the Sussexes being excluded from their first Christmas after stepping back. 2021 recycled the same narrative with minor updates. 2022, 2023, 2024, the formula remained unchanged. And now 2025 has delivered yet another iteration of the exact same playbook. The structure never varies. First comes the hint that this might finally be the year. Relationships are thawing. An invitation could still arrive. Sources suggest the king wants his son home for Christmas. This phase creates anticipation and positions the Sussexes as sympathetic figures who simply want to reconnect with family. Then comes the pivot, when no invitation materializes because the October deadline passed months ago with no Sussex names on the list. The narrative transforms into grievance. The royal family looks cold and unfeeling. The missing invitation is framed as something done to Harry and Meghan rather than the predictable consequence of their own choices and behavior. The genius of this playbook, if you can call it that, lies in its exploitation of public memory. Most people do not remember what headlines said 12 months ago. They experience each Christmas news cycle fresh, unaware that they are consuming the same story they consumed the previous year. Team Sussex counts on this collective amnesia to run the same play again and again. But the internet has a long memory. Researchers have documented the pattern. Royal watchers have cataloged the identical phrases, and once you see the formula laid bare, you cannot unsee it. The Sussex Christmas narrative is not organic news coverage of a family in conflict. It is a carefully orchestrated annual campaign designed to generate sympathy through manufactured victimhood. And this year they added a particularly cruel new element to the script. In September 2025, something happened that Team Sussex desperately wanted the world to interpret as a turning point. Prince Harry met with King Charles in person for the first time in 19 months. 19 months of estrangement, of transatlantic distance, of a father and son communicating through intermediaries, if they communicated at all, and then suddenly a meeting. The Sussex PR machine roared into action almost immediately. Stories emerged painting the reunion in the most emotional terms imaginable. Sources close to Harry claimed there were tears. Reports suggested the father and son had rushed toward each other, embracing in a moment of profound reconciliation. The narrative being sold was unmistakable. This was the beginning of healing. This was the first step toward Harry coming home. But palace insiders told a very different story. Within days of the meeting, sources connected to Buckingham Palace began pushing back against the Sussex version of events. The word that kept appearing in their responses was devastating in its dismissiveness. Laughable. The claims being made about the emotional reunion, the tears, the breakthrough in relations. Palace sources called it laughable. Think about the weight of that word for a moment. The king's own team was not offering polite diplomatic disagreement. They were not suggesting the Sussex account was slightly exaggerated. They were calling it laughable, a complete fabrication dressed up as heartwarming reunion. And here is what makes this particularly significant when it comes to the Christmas narrative. The September meeting was supposed to be the foundation for everything that followed. If Harry and Charles had truly reconciled in an emotional breakthrough, then surely a Christmas invitation would follow. Surely the king would want his son at Sandringham after such a meaningful reconnection. But October came and went. The invitations were dispatched to 45 guests, and Harry and Meghan were not among them. The September meeting, whatever actually happened behind closed doors, changed absolutely nothing about the Sussex standing within the royal family. It did not open doors. It did not thaw frozen relationships. It did not lead to a single invitation to any family gathering. What it did accomplish was providing Team Sussex with material for their annual PR campaign. They could now reference the September meeting as evidence that reconciliation was possible. They could point to the reported emotional reunion as proof that Harry wanted to return. And when Christmas arrived without an invitation, they could frame the exclusion as even more cruel. How could the family reject Harry after such a meaningful breakthrough with his father? Except the breakthrough never happened. Palace sources made that clear. The September meeting was not the heartwarming turning point Sussex PR claimed it to be. And the lack of a Christmas invitation proves that whatever occurred in that room, it did not move the needle on family relations 1 inch. Meanwhile, Meghan was focused on something else entirely during those autumn months, something that reveals where her true priorities actually lie. While the cold shoulder narrative played out in tabloid headlines, Meghan Markle was busy doing something that tells you everything about where her actual priorities lie. She was not sitting by the phone waiting desperately for a Sandringham invitation. She was not tearfully watching royal Christmas footage from across the Atlantic. She was building her brand empire with laser focus, and December 2025 was her biggest launch month yet. On December 3rd, Netflix released her series With Love, Meghan Holiday Celebration. The timing was not coincidental. While the media swirled with stories about Sussex exclusion from royal festivities, Meghan was positioning herself as the ultimate lifestyle guru, inviting cameras into her Montecito world to showcase her version of holiday perfection. Christmas crackers, personalized advent calendars, special recipes, all presented with the polished aesthetic of someone building a multimedia empire, not mourning family estrangement. Then came Christmas Eve, and Meghan made another calculated move. She issued her first ever festive newsletter to customers of her lifestyle brand As Ever. This was not a casual holiday greeting. This was a strategic communication designed to deepen customer relationships and establish Meghan as a trusted voice in the wellness and lifestyle space. She shared intimate details about her family's holiday plans, including dim sum on Christmas Eve and board games like Scrabble, Sequence, and Candyland, scheduled for Christmas Day. Notice the contrast here. The public narrative suggested a woman heartbroken over royal rejection, alienated from her husband's family during the most meaningful time of year. But the actual Meghan was firing off brand newsletters, promoting her Netflix content, and cultivating her image as a California lifestyle entrepreneur. These are not the actions of someone devastated by a snub. These are the actions of someone executing a business plan. Her wellness brand As Ever had already demonstrated market success. The initial product launch back in April sold out almost immediately, proving that despite the controversy surrounding her, Meghan could move merchandise. The Christmas season represented an opportunity to capitalize on that momentum, and she seized it with both hands. The Netflix special gave her platform. The newsletter gave her direct customer connection. The carefully curated holiday traditions gave her content. Every element worked together to build the Meghan Markle brand, transforming her from exiled royal into aspirational lifestyle figure. Sandringham was never part of that business model. And this is where the cold shoulder narrative reveals its true purpose. It was never about genuine heartbreak over family exclusion. It was about generating media coverage during the exact window when Meghan needed maximum visibility for her brand launches. Every headline about Sussex Christmas drama was a headline that kept Meghan's name in the public conversation. Every story about royal rejection reminded audiences that the Netflix special existed, that the lifestyle brand was available, that Meghan Markle was still relevant. But the fashion world invitations she received in the autumn tell an even more revealing story about the validation she actually craves. Forget Sandringham. The invitations Meghan Markle actually cared about in 2025 came from an entirely different world, and she received them with open arms. While the media obsessed over whether the Sussexes would be welcomed back to royal Christmas celebrations, Meghan was collecting validation from the fashion elite, and those October invitations reveal exactly where her ambitions truly lie. Paris Fashion Week in fall 2025 became Meghan's coming out party on the global style stage. She did not slip in quietly or hover on the periphery hoping to be noticed. She arrived with intention, positioning herself among the industry's most powerful figures and receiving warm receptions that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. The fashion world, it seemed, was ready to embrace the Duchess in a way the royal family never would again. The most significant moment came when Anna Wintour herself acknowledged Meghan's presence. The Vogue editor-in-chief, known for her icy demeanor and ruthless gatekeeping of fashion's inner circle, treated Meghan with the kind of warmth reserved for true insiders. This was not a polite acknowledgement from across a crowded room. This was acceptance into a club that most people will never even glimpse from the outside. But Meghan was not finished climbing. Following her Fashion Week triumphs, she secured lunch with Chloe Malley, Vogue's new editor, in New York. The meeting was strategic, positioning Meghan as someone the magazine should continue covering, featuring, and celebrating. Every lunch, every photo opportunity, every warm reception added another brick to the foundation Meghan was building in the fashion and lifestyle space. And then came the whispers that set tongues wagging across both coasts. Speculation emerged that Meghan might receive an invitation to the 2026 Met Gala, the most exclusive fashion event on the planet. The guest list for this annual spectacle is guarded more carefully than state secrets, and attendance signals that you have truly arrived in the cultural elite. The question being asked in fashion circles was whether co-hosts Venus Williams, Nicole Kidman, and Beyoncé would vouch for Meghan's inclusion. Compare these October invitations to the Sandringham invitation that never came. One represents a world Meghan left behind, a world of protocol and tradition and family obligations she found suffocating. The other represents the world she has been fighting to enter since the moment she stepped back from royal duties, a world of celebrity influence and cultural power completely detached from the Windsor family tree. The cold shoulder from Sandringham was not a wound, it was a liberation. Every door that closed in the royal world freed Meghan to knock on doors in Hollywood, in fashion, in the lifestyle space where she believes her true destiny awaits. The fashion invitations prove she is making progress. The royal exclusion simply no longer matters to her calculus. But while Meghan chased glamour, her PR team deployed a tactic so cruel it shocked even seasoned royal watchers. Every year, the Sussex Christmas PR campaign finds a new angle to maximize sympathy, but 2025 brought something that crossed a line even their harshest critics did not expect. This year, Team Sussex decided to weaponize King Charles's ongoing battle with cancer, cynically exploiting his illness to push reconciliation headlines that palace sources had already dismissed as fantasy. The headlines appeared with disturbing predictability. King Charles allegedly open to reconciliation with estranged son. King Charles' cancer battle, latest, and how he is poised to invite Harry and Meghan for one last Christmas. King Charles allegedly considering inviting Harry and Meghan. Each story dripped with emotional manipulation, using the specter of a father's mortality to paint the Sussexes as longing children being denied precious final moments. Read those headlines again and let their cruelty sink in. One last Christmas. The implication is unmistakable. The king might be dying, and the heartless royal machinery is preventing a son from seeing his father before it is too late. This framing transforms a PR campaign into emotional blackmail, leveraging public sympathy for a cancer patient to generate coverage for a couple living comfortably in a $16 million Montecito mansion. The timing was calculated with surgical precision. Charles had been public about his diagnosis and ongoing treatment throughout 2025. The public felt genuine concern for the monarch, wanting him to recover, hoping he would have many more Christmases with his family. Team Sussex saw that wellspring of public goodwill and decided to redirect it toward their own narrative purposes. But Buckingham Palace was not playing along. Sources connected to the king pushed back firmly against the reconciliation storyline. The same people who called the September meeting claims laughable were equally dismissive of suggestions that Charles was preparing to welcome Harry and Meghan back into the fold. The stories being planted in sympathetic outlets did not reflect reality. They reflected Sussex wishful thinking, dressed up as insider information. What makes this particularly egregious is that Harry reportedly does want some form of relationship with his father. By all accounts, there are genuine feelings involved, complicated by years of public attacks, memoir revelations, and documentary accusations. But whatever authentic emotion exists between father and son is being buried beneath layers of PR manipulation that use cancer as a marketing tool. Imagine being King Charles, fighting a serious illness while trying to fulfill your duties as monarch, and seeing headlines suggesting you are desperately trying to reconcile with your son before death claims you. Imagine knowing those stories are being planted by your son's team to generate sympathy during the Christmas news cycle. The exploitation is breathtaking in its shamelessness, and yet Harry allows it. Whether he is directing this strategy or simply failing to stop it, the cancer exploitation headlines appear with his tacit approval. His father's illness has become content for the Sussex PR machine. But there remains one royal who has shown no sign of softening, no matter what tactics are deployed. King Charles may harbor complicated feelings about his younger son. A father's love does not disappear overnight. No matter how many Netflix documentaries attack the family, or how many memoirs spill palace secrets. But Prince William represents something entirely different in the Sussex reconciliation equation. William has built a wall, and every indication suggests he has no intention of ever taking it down. Sources close to the royal family consistently describe relations between William and Harry as particularly strained. That diplomatic language barely conceals what insiders describe as a complete breakdown in the brotherly bond. These are not two siblings experiencing a rough patch that time will heal. This is an estrangement that William appears to have accepted as permanent, and his Christmas choices in 2025 speak louder than any official statement ever could. After attending the morning church service at Sandringham with the royal family, William and Catherine made a decision that raised eyebrows among royal watchers. Rather than staying for the extended Christmas lunch at the king's estate, they departed to spend the afternoon with the Middleton family. This was not an emergency or a scheduling conflict. This was a choice about where they wanted to be and, perhaps more importantly, where they did not want to be. The Middletons represent everything the Sussexes abandoned: a close-knit family unit, warmth without drama, support without conditions. Catherine's parents welcomed William into their world years ago, and he has repeatedly expressed how much he values the normalcy they provide. When given the option between extended royal formalities and Middleton family time, William chose the family that functions without chaos. But William's resistance to Sussex reconciliation goes deeper than personal preference. As future king, he must think institutionally. Every attack Harry and Meghan launch against the monarchy damages the institution William will one day lead. Every leaked detail, every accusation of racism, every complaint about royal life makes William's eventual reign more difficult. He is not just an offended brother, he is a future monarch protecting his inheritance. Royal watchers note that William has been the driving force behind keeping Andrew out of public royal events this year. If William is willing to take a hard line against his own uncle for the sake of institutional reputation, why would anyone expect him to soften toward a brother who has caused far more sustained damage? The same protective instincts that exiled Andrew from Christmas at Sandringham apply doubly to Harry. There are reports suggesting William told his father directly that Sussex presence at any royal event would be impossible to manage from a public relations perspective. It does not matter what Charles might privately wish, William understands that the monarchy survives on public perception, and public perception of Harry and Meghan among British audiences has cratered beyond recovery. The wall William has built is not emotional spite. It is strategic protection of everything he will one day inherit. Meanwhile, the Sussexes spent their Christmas in a very different world entirely. Strip away the cold shoulder headlines and the victimhood narrative, and what you find is a Christmas celebration that looks nothing like exile, and everything like a carefully curated California lifestyle. Harry and Meghan spent December 25th in their $16 million Montecito estate with their children Archie and Lilibet, joined by Meghan's mother Doria Ragland. This was not a family huddled in heartbreak over royal rejection. This was a family living exactly the life they chose. Meghan herself revealed the details in her Christmas Eve newsletter to As Ever customers. Dim sum on Christmas Eve, a tradition that reflects her California sensibilities rather than any British heritage. Board games scheduled for Christmas Day, Scrabble, Sequence, and Candyland lined up for family entertainment. Personalized advent calendars, special recipes prepared in her famous kitchen, every element designed to project warmth, intimacy, and intentional living. Compare this reality to the narrative being sold in tabloid headlines. The PR campaign wanted audiences to imagine Harry staring wistfully across the Atlantic, longing for the Sandringham traditions of his childhood. It wanted people to picture Meghan as a woman unfairly denied the chance to reconcile with her husband's family during the season of forgiveness. The manipulation relies on audiences not thinking too carefully about what Sussex Christmas actually looks like, because the truth is Meghan has created exactly the holiday experience she wants. No rigid royal protocols dictating when gifts can be opened. No formal black tie dinners requiring precise etiquette. No morning church services with cameras capturing every expression for global analysis. The Montecito Christmas is Meghan's Christmas, designed according to her preferences and executed under her creative direction. Doria Ragland's presence completes the picture of a family unit entirely separate from Windsor influence. Meghan's mother has been a consistent presence in the Sussex world since they relocated to California, providing the family connection that Meghan chose to maintain while cutting ties with her father Thomas. The Christmas gathering reflected those choices. Doria welcomed Thomas excluded, royals irrelevant. Archie and Lilibet, now 6 and 4 years old, are growing up in this environment. Their Christmas memories will not include Sandringham church services or great-grandmother's gift exchanges. They will remember Montecito sunshine, board games with their parents, and the particular traditions their mother has designed for them. Whether this represents liberation or loss depends entirely on your perspective, but here is what cannot be disputed. Harry and Meghan are not prisoners of circumstance, trapped in California exile while dreaming of English Christmases. They are architects of their current situation, having chosen every element that now defines their lives: the mansion, the location, the distance from family, the lifestyle brand, the Netflix deals. All of it reflects decisions they made freely and continue to defend publicly. The cold shoulder narrative requires audiences to forget that the Sussexes chose this life, and as 2026 approaches, that narrative faces a reckoning. The Sussex PR playbook has now been exposed with surgical precision. The October invitation timeline proves that every cold shoulder headline was manufactured months after the outcome was already determined. The annual pattern from 2020 through 2025 reveals a formula so predictable it could be generated by by algorithm. The September meeting changed nothing. The cancer exploitation crossed lines that cannot be uncrossed, and William's wall shows no signs of crumbling. So where does this leave Harry and Meghan as 2026 begins? The honest answer is exactly where they have been for years, trapped in a narrative of their own creation, unable to move forward without abandoning the victimhood that sustains their public relevance. Meghan will continue building her brand empire. The fashion world invitations suggest she is making progress toward the cultural elite status she craves. The Netflix partnership, despite underwhelming viewership for her holiday special, remains intact for now. As ever, will launch new products. The lifestyle content will keep flowing. Her trajectory points toward complete independence from anything remotely royal, and that appears to be precisely what she wants. But Harry exists in a more complicated space. Reports suggest he has been making tentative steps toward his own charitable work through Invictus, the veterans organization that predates Meghan's influence in his life. Insiders whisper that he genuinely wants some form of reconciliation with his father, some acknowledgement that the relationship can be salvaged before time runs out. These are not the impulses of a man entirely content with California exile, and here lies the fundamental tension that will define the Sussex story going forward. What Harry reportedly wants and what Meghan's strategy requires are not the same thing. Every genuine step toward royal reconciliation threatens the narrative that sustains their media value. Every softening of family relations undermines the cold shoulder victimhood that generates headlines and sympathy. Some royal watchers believe Meghan will sabotage any real reconciliation attempts, whether consciously or instinctively. The pattern supports this theory. The September meeting was immediately spun into PR material. Private family communications become tabloid fodder. Any progress Harry makes toward his father gets buried beneath headlines designed to maintain conflict rather than resolve it. The 2026 Christmas cycle will almost certainly repeat the familiar formula. November will bring stories about hope and openness. December will deliver snub and alienation. The October invitations will have gone out months earlier, but the narrative will pretend the outcome remained uncertain until the final moment. Same script, new year, but the audience is catching on. The pattern has been documented, the timeline has been exposed, and eventually even the most sympathetic observers grow tired of watching the same performance repeated annually with no variation. The cold shoulder story has collapsed. The question now is whether Harry will ever see what the rest of the world already knows, that he is trapped in a narrative designed to ensure he never goes home. Drop your thoughts below, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you will not believe what is coming next.